Let's go back, forgotten Hollywood.
Welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood, the podcast where we shine a spotlight on the untold stories, overlooked legends, and behind the scenes magic that help shape the entertainment industry we know today. I'm your host, Doug Hess, and today's guest is someone who didn't just witness the evolution of Hollywood, he helped create a whole new chapter in it. Larry Namer is a true media pioneer, a Brooklyn-born cable technician turned visionary entrepreneur. Larry co-founded E! Entertainment Television, yes, the E! Network, and in doing so helped redefine celebrity culture, red carpet coverage, and entertainment journalism as we know it. But what you may not know is the story behind the scenes, the struggles, the risks, the early skepticism, and the involvement that made E! a household name. Today, Larry takes us back to the early days of cable TV, shares the forgotten stories from Hollywood's media transformation, and reflects on what has been lost and found in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So grab your headphones and take a seat behind the curtain. This is Forgotten Hollywood with Larry Namer. Larry, welcome to Forgotten Hollywood.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule to be with us today. We really appreciate that. And we'll just go ahead and dive right in and say, so Larry, maybe take us a little back a little, and what was some of your earliest memories of Hollywood or entertainment when you were growing up in Brooklyn?
Well, I grew up in what still is not gentrified Brooklyn. I grew up in what was Coney Island, so that's still a hood. Um, and just never in a million years imagined I would end up in Hollywood. I could never imagine leaving Brooklyn, or New York. And I it was kind of interesting because we went to public schools, and three of my folks that we were in the seventh grade, we all ended up in Hollywood in fairly successful, I mean, not very successful positions. Stan Rogo went on to become, the head of children's programming at Disney, and Elliot Lurie he went on to become the head of music at Fox. And here are three kids from the neighborhood in the seventh grade together end up in Hollywood and did pretty well. Just again, family had immigrant mentality, which is the kids need to get civil service jobs so they could retire at 65 with a pension. So no thoughts or aspirations at that point.
Oh, great. So you co-founded E! At a time when cable TV was still considered probably the wild, wild west. What was the original vision, and how did it differ from what existed on TV at the time?
Well, we started, the original name was called Movie Time.
Hmm.
And then, which was because we focused on the film industry, but then we decided to be much broader and cover entertainment. We changed the name to E! But Alan and I ended up in California to build a cable system because I started out on the cable system side of the
Uh-huh.
business. And Alan was my friend from New Jersey. And after the company I worked for sold and they went back to Canada, they wanted me to go to Canada. And I was like, no, no, no. I didn't go from, New York to LA to go to Canada. I said, I'm done with the cold. I like it out here. And so Alan and I just started kicking around ideas. And when I came out to California, I built Valley Cable, which was the first 61 channel two-way cable system ever built. And one of the things that always fascinated me, because now I had everything reported to me, including programming. So for the first time, um, all your neighbors are going to parties and premieres and all this. Everybody's part of Hollywood. And I said, wow, that looks really cool. I want to do that. And I talked to the studios and they go, no, you're more like the phone company or the gas company. You're a utility. We're not going to invite you. And then I met someone actually, I think from Universal. And, I said, I don't understand. The most valuable marketing tool you have is a movie trailer. But yet the only time I ever see a movie trailer is when I'm in the movies. I said, wouldn't you want me to see that when I'm at home to make me want to go to the movies? And they went, yeah, but it's very expensive to put 2 minutes on TV. We don't do that. I said, great. I got 61 channels and I'm not sure what you put on 61 channels. And I said, give me the movie trailers and, I'll put them on for free, but you put me on those lists. And he said, sure. But when we did audience surveys, um, what's your favorite channel? They're going, oh, I love CNN. I love ESPN. I love that trailer channel. And I'm like, wow, that's really weird. I'm getting the best 2 minutes of a then $50 million movie for
Hmm.
free, and people absolutely love it. And I just kind of filed that in the back of my head. But then when the company sold out, Alan and I were kicking around ideas, and he said, I've been fascinated by MTV, and wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody did MTV of the movies? And I said, wait a second. I said, I had this trailer channel at Valley Cable. And, when you think about it, MTV got all these music videos for free. And they stood a host in front of a green screen and said, hey, and Madonna has a new video. I said, we could stand a host in front of a green screen and say, hey, Schwarzenegger has a new movie. So, that kind of started, how we were able to think that this could be a successful venture because we would get all this great content for free, just like MTV. But, we wrote a business plan and we thought we were really smart. And then, we just started getting hit with the objections. People going, hey, what? It's an interesting idea, but you're not Fox, you're not Disney, you're not Time Warner. People don't start TV networks. You got to be a big media company
Sure.
start a TV network. No person has ever done it. No person will ever do it. And nice idea, but get out of here. We were rejected over 100 times. Where we went and pitched, and finally we found someone who worked for a bond house on Wall Street and said, hey, I really love it and I want to do it. And we were like, well, these things cost somewhere between 60 and $100 million to start. Could you give us more like the hundred? And then he said, oh, no, no, no. I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5. And I was like, what am I going to do with 2.5? I can't even buy the cameras. And he said, well, that's all I can sign for. So Alan and I just said, you know what? We're smart. We'll figure it out. So we literally made a deal. We took $2.5 million, and I had a friend who was teaching radio, television, film at University of Texas in Austin. And I called him up and said, Brian, do you have kids who need summer intern jobs? I got like all these openings and stuff. And he said, yeah, we had trouble placing this year. I said, well, great. Send me all you got. So, people don't realize because he turned into a monster. It's 142 countries and arguably the biggest influence of pop culture in the world. But he started with 11 employees and 31 interns.
Wow. Amazing. So Larry, what was some of the biggest challenges trying to get the talent convinced that a 24-hour entertainment news network would work?
Well, we started out. We spent a lot of our money and a lot of our time finding hosts. We
Hmm.
said we don't have enough money to affect by do fancy programming or anything like
Sure.
that. The biggest thing we could spend on would be picking hosts. And people always say, "Oh, you guys were very lucky. You had all those great hosts." We had Greg Kinnear, who won an Academy Award.
Right.
Greg and Julie Moran went to be the first woman on Wide World of Sports, and Katie Wagner did Lifestyles of the Famous, and Mark DiCarlo did Studs. Um, that was not an accident. That was very deliberate. Again, with very limited money, we just went crazy on saying we got to find hosts that people love or hate, but they got to feel something from. So we
Sure.
actually put, God, I think it was 7,200 people on tape to get the first five hosts. Uh,
Wow.
so that was not an accident. So we did that, and we started by having the hosts introduce the movie trailers, very MTV like, and then when we launched, um, it's funny because we launched with this low amount of money, and we couldn't even buy professional equipment. We bought like used equipment that people were using for making sales training tapes and stuff. So our stuff looked very pirate. It looked very different. And, that turned out to be fortuitous because people were like, oh my God, this is so different than anything we've seen. It seems like pirate TV. Well, in effect, it was pirate. And, but, as soon as we went on the air, everybody said, oh my God, this is what you wanted to do. You should have told us. We would have given you the money 3 years ago. And we grew in the first year. I think we ended up in 14 different countries, which was
Wow.
unthinkable, back in that time.
Wow. That's amazing. Um, how did you handle some of the early criticism, skepticism from Hollywood insiders?
Well, everybody was like, they were laughing at us and stuff like that. I mean, we applied, um, the first year we applied for credentials to go to the Oscars,
Hmm.
and we got rejected. They said, "Oh, you're some dumb little cable network. We're not giving you anything." So again, being kind of scrappy, Brooklyn, whatever, we literally climbed over the fence. We snuck in. We were on the red carpet, and we were there for almost a half an hour before we got caught. And they escorted us out unceremoniously. But we had all this footage, and the real difference was, you had things like Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, and they were very stiff. It would be, so, Mr. Cruz, tell us about your next movie. And we kind of, Al and I shared this thing like Hollywood is funny stuff. Don't try and make believe it's rocket science. And, we'd be on the carpet going, whoa, Tom, those are amazing shoes. Where'd you get those? What are you doing with the kids on the weekend? Um, so we just took this whole different attitude, and it just the audience recognized it, and it resonated, and and that kind of led to the way red carpets were covered after that. And then when the studios began to see the kind of reaction that we got from the way we were covering versus
Hmm.
the way everybody else was. All of a sudden they were like, "Hey, do you want the Wayans brothers on? Do you want these on?" But I think the real turning point was we there was a famous actor in Odd Couple, Jack Lemmon.
Hmm.
Jack was known for not really doing a lot of marketing publicity stuff. And, we asked the manager if he would come on before some project that he was doing. And it was like, no, Jack doesn't like to do that. And I was like, well, what does Jack like to do? And he was like, well, Jack is very private and he stays home. He loves playing the piano and stuff like that. I said, okay, tell you what, I got 24 hours a day to fill. I said, I'll put a piano on the set and let Jack come and play the piano for an hour. And he goes, and nobody will talk to him or ask him questions. I go, I guarantee it. Nobody, he'll just play the piano and leave. And, Jack came and very wary, waiting, going, these guys can't be serious that
Sure.
nobody's going to talk to me. And, I just told the crew, I said, don't, nobody just let Jack play. And so Jack started playing the piano, looking around, waiting for somebody to, break the silence, and then realized that we actually weren't going to do it. And he just got really comfortable and just turned to the camera and started talking.
Wow.
And all the stuff that people wanted to ask him for years, he just started talking about it. And then word got out around town. They go, this cable network called, I mean, we were still movie time at that time. Got Jack Lemmon to come on and talk.
Uh-huh.
And then everybody was calling us. They were going, so and so wants a host. Could you put someone on as a guest host? And we had all these amazing guest hosts, and so we actually became Hollywood's channel. And what was interesting is, even though Hollywood was kind of the entertainment center of the world,
Hmm.
back then, there were no TV networks that were centered in Hollywood. Oddly, we were the first one, and so we talked to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and told them what we're doing, and they embraced it. They said, "Wow, this is amazing. We finally got a TV channel here." So we would get invited to all their events and stuff. So we became kind of the insiders.
That's great. Well, kind of piggybacking off of that. So, did you anticipate how influential you would become for the red carpets, reality TV, and celebrity news?
Not in a million years.
Not in a million years.
We always knew. We said, "Look, how hard is it to figure out that people around the world love Hollywood, Hollywood gossip, Hollywood stories, and stuff like that. But not, again, Al and I are two, East Coast kids, and playing in a world that was meant for big media companies only, and
Sure.
and people tried to crush us. People were offended by these two idiots that were out there, changing the world. And Fox was not happy with us. Home Shopping Network, which was hugely successful at the time and had an amazing amount of money, they decided they were going to launch their own. And they made an announcement that they're launching an entertainment channel just like us. And but then after their announcement, they realized we already had the backing of all the studios and all the cable operators, and they literally had with their head in their butt, had to back off and tell the Wall Street Journal that they decided not to go forward with it.
That's great. So your career spans decades. Are there any personalities or moments in Hollywood history that you don't feel get the recognition that they deserve?
Um, well, I think there's a lot of stuff there. I think, I mean, one of my favorite people of all time is Greg Kinnear,
Mm,
and when we started, with Greg introducing movie trailers, and then we created Talk Soup,
yep,
um, mainly for Greg, and I think he's an amazing actor. He's an amazing person.
I
Uh,
would agree.
he's wonderful. If Alan and I have an event to celebrate some anniversary of no matter where Greg is, he shows up and stuff like that. So yeah, Greg, and yeah, but there have been so many people. I mean, we were one of the first people to recognize the Wayans brothers. Uh,
Mm,
well, before they were the Wayans brothers, when it was just one Wayan, and yeah, folks like that, and yeah, there are just so many people with such incredible talent. I mean, we missed a bunch. Um, we were nimble enough to recover. When Alan was friends with this woman who was teaching dancing to Laker cheerleaders, and he goes, Paula wants to come on, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? We're not a cheerleading channel, and and Paula came on before the first album and stuff like that. Paula Abdul, obviously, Paula
sure.
do really well. Um, so people like Ryan Seacrest, we interviewed a few
Mm,
times, and we were like, oh, Ryan, you're a nice boy, but we're not sure this is for you. And then finally we said, oh, what the hell, and obviously Ryan went on to do pretty good. And, you know, just, just so many stories. I mean, we were so, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And,
sure,
now he is 142 countries. Um, we had a lot of time to be whimsical.
sure. So you've seen the entertainment industry evolve. Is there any old school Hollywood values that you think have been lost?
I think a lot of old school. Um, well, first, Hollywood was early Hollywood was a very innovative place. I mean,
Sure,
there were people there that were not afraid to take chances. They put their money where their mouth is. Hollywood has become very corporate, um,
sure,
public company mentality. It's we got to report quarterly results, so we not
right.
take a lot of chances. Um, very different than the way it was than it used to be. I mean, when you look at the fact that it was I thought absolutely clear that the world, when digital came around, that the world was going to go to streaming. And,
Mm,
you look at it and you say, a simple equation. Do you want to watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it? Or do you want to watch what NBC wants you to watch when they want you to watch it?
right.
We all knew the answer. And, but yet, people stuck with linear television networks. And then now, you look at Comcast looking to divest their linear
Yeah,
TV networks now. It should have been done 15 years ago or 10 years ago at least, because there was no question where the audience was going. And, it was not towards linear. And, it just made no sense at all to stay in that format. But then again, you talk to some of the CEOs at the big cable networks or the cable groups, and they were like, well, in order for us to move from linear to digital, we'd have to write off $7 billion in equipment
Mm,
that you no longer need. And I don't want to walk into a boardroom telling them that I'm, writing down $7 billion. I want to retire in 2 years, let my predecessor, you know, deal with that issue and stuff. So you kind of lost a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit.
sure.
And like I say, you just look at what's happened, and fighting digital music and things like that. Technology marches on whether you like it or not. I mean, I think we're seeing the same thing with AI now. Where
Sure.
people are just going, "Oh, that's horrible. We're not going to let that happen." Well, it's going to happen whether you like it or not.
Right.
How do you play in the game? How do you protect your rights? How do you use this to be more creative or more, um, to get more done than you ever did before? And you got to adopt, and that's what early Hollywood did, and then it kind of lost its way, sometime in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So how does the global entertainment landscape compare to Hollywood?
Um, well, you go back and you look at why Hollywood became Hollywood. You had all these amazing immigrants, mainly East
Hmm.
Indians, and they came and they had a vision and they were entrepreneurial and stuff. But you go back, Hollywood was the place you had to come if you wanted to make any visual entertainment. You needed big sound stages, and you needed uh, very expensive equipment. I think when I started it, a good camera was like $250,000, and it's not as good as my iPhone. Uh, but you look at it, you say, as technology keeps bringing down the barriers to entry and bringing down the costs, that less and less. So, it used to be Germany would take, a Hollywood TV show and dub it, and, it was in English and they dub it in German. And then
Sure.
when the prices got enough, they said, hey, we can make stuff here in Germany in our language, and Russia and every place else. So, we were probably one of the first, if not the first, to recognize that Hollywood stops becoming the production center of the
Hmm.
world, but really becomes it's a level of quality, it's a measure of creativity, um, stuff there, and that you got to really understand that video entertainment is going to be made literally anywhere. And you
Sure.
look at it now, I could go to Africa with my iPhone and make a movie that's as good as something that I could have done when I first got into business. That would have cost me millions of dollars. I mean, now with AI, you know, graphics and effects and things that
Yep.
used to cost me tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars, now cost me pennies. Um, so, technology changes everything. You're never going to stop it.
Right.
When in the early days of Hollywood, you look at this country and, we had horse farm, horse ranchers, and
Right.
like they wanted everybody to have horse and buggy. And they weren't real happy when Henry Ford started, mass producing cars. I just take people, I say, come to the window with me, let's look out. Tell me how many horse and buggies you see, and tell me how many cars you see. You
Right.
know, we need laws, we need regulations, we need things that stop bad people from doing bad things. But
Sure.
we're not going to stop the technology.
That is so true. So, Larry, looking back, what's something you would have done differently if you were just now launching E?
Well, if I were to launch E today, I would. I mean, I would never launch a linear television network. I would never launch a 24-hour day network because that's not the way people consume media.
Yeah, true.
So we would have gone non-linear. I mean, don't forget, we were one of the first to really move to the digital world with the online, um, which was the precursor to a lot of these streamers. And I love short form. I think the attention span is, clearly moving to shorter and shorter. I mean, and we've seen TikToks, and now we see
Yep.
vertical dramas and stuff like that. So we would start more that way. I mean, actually, I'm helping Alan, my partner Alan Marufka. It's just started a channel called Verza, which is for these short films, and I'm
Hmm.
helping them with global strategy and stuff like that. And it's amazing that people are laughing that it's cheesy and stuff like that, but that's what the audience wants to watch. They want to watch
True.
it on their cell phone. I mean, we started. I have a company in China, and one of the shows we do is called Hello Hollywood, which is we look at Hollywood, but how does the Chinese audience what is it they want to know?
Hmm.
I mean, here, it's like, well, TMZ, let's catch someone cheating on their wife and we'll ruin their life forever. And
Sure.
it's much more gentle. So we started Hello Hollywood, and but we realized that 72% of the people who were watching our stuff in China were watching us on a cell phone. And we
Wow.
just said, why are we shooting horizontal when people are watching it vertical? Um,
Fair enough.
and so we started shooting vertical there years ago and stuff, and it made more sense because that's the way people were watching it. I mean, even to the point where, you know, here you do final edit on a 55-inch television monitor. We were doing final edit on a 5-inch iPhone.
Wow. How times have changed.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You gotta, not everything lasts forever, and nor do
That's right.
we have to. I mean, now the whole backlash to AI and stuff, it's an amazing tool. I mean, when I got in the business, I always use this as an example. If I would write a script, I
Hmm.
would do it on a typewriter, and it
Sure.
would take me 3 months, and used to have this little bottle of whiteout. And you made a mistake, you had to do it. It looked like garbage by the time you finished it because you had all these little white spots.
Sure.
And then the laptop came around and word processing, and what
Yep.
used to take me 3 months was now taking me 5 days. And and now AI comes. If you would ask me to say, Larry, could you write a preliminary plan on doing a TV service, on coffee cups, make up
Right.
anything.
Sure.
It used to take me 5 days to do the research, do the competitive analysis, to do a budget, to do a little PowerPoint. It now takes me 30 seconds.
Right.
It takes an I got to clean it up. It's never 100%. It
Sure.
needs the human touch. But it takes me an hour. I said, so, if I could get paid the same thing that used to take me 5 days, I can now get paid, for that thing done in an hour. I said, how could I not love that? I mean, as human beings, we all have a limited time on this planet,
That's right.
and time is the most valuable, asset we have. I said, so I could either do more of these and make more money. I could spend more time with my little grandkid because I got one now, and or I could learn how to speak Spanish, or I could go on a cruise. I mean, protect my ability to earn, based on my finished product, and I love it. I've been using AI, to do something. I wrote a book, well, let's see, 6 months ago, and and the book came out, and the publisher called me right away. He goes, Larry, your book's out 4 days, and it already hit the bestseller list. What's going on? Did you buy all the books? And I'm like, no, actually, if I would have thought of it, I might have done that. I said, quite honestly, I used well, then it was ChatGPT
Right.
to do my marketing plan, and it did a marketing plan, and I followed it, and literally in 4 days, this book became a bestseller. Um, I mean, if AI, if ChatGPT is smarter than I am on creating book marketing plans, which I never did before, I said, gotta love it.
Yep. Yeah. You'd be crazy not to use it. Really. And I believe that book is called Off Script, the Larry Niemer story. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's off script recipes for success. It's an odd book because it's, while I do the TV stuff pretty good, I've since 12 I've been an aspiring chef. So the book is breaking my life into like 8 different segments because
Mm,
you kind of have my Brooklyn years, my Manhattan cable years, my E years, my Russia years, my China years, etc. Um, so I do the stories from those times mixed with the recipes that inspired me during each of those phases. So it's an odd book in that it's somewhere between a memoir and a cookbook.
which is different. I will be the first to admit that. Well, Larry, I know we're getting close on time, so I want to ask you one last question before we let you go is what advice would you give to a young media entrepreneur trying to create something in today's streaming slash social media environment?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, don't think you're ever going to stop technology from marching on. I mean, that's going to happen regardless. But, you know, everybody, I think most entrepreneurs, not just the media, but in anything, they get caught up in this advice, follow your passion. Well, you know what? Most of the time, people think their passion is really something that was their hobby. And
Hmm,
we all have the same necessities of life. We got to earn enough money to be able to eat and pay the rent and
right.
feed the kids or educate the kids and stuff. So, what I tell people, I said, find something you're good at and then work your butt off and become great at it. And then what it'll do, it'll throw off enough money so that you'll have the luxury of following your passion. Like for me, it's cooking. I mean, and if I didn't figure out that I could make a living on this TV stuff or media stuff, I'd probably be in a kitchen of a restaurant somewhere cleaning the pots and pans. Just get great at something, earn that living, and that will let you pursue your hobbies.
That's solid and great advice. Larry, thank you so much for coming on, spending a few minutes with us today. We really appreciate it. And again, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today and our listeners.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for listening to this episode of Forgotten.
Let's go back, forgotten Hollywood.